Hello, I'm Dave. This is my wife, Cathy.
Hello, Dave.
You're mixing up the intro. Do you like that?
Yeah, I love it.
We are walking to the BFI London IMAX by Waterloo to see Christopher Nolan's newest movie, Dunkirk. This is apparently the best way to see this movie. We had a lot of people tweet us who've already seen it, saying go to the IMAX, go to the IMAX, go to the IMAX.
And we bought our tickets a week ago. That's how long it took to get them.
It's been sold out all week.
Yeah.
Could not get to this movie. So it's 5 to 10.
On a Saturday morning.
We're going at 10 a.m.
But I'm happy because if we'd come after work, I think I wouldn't have been into it. But it's like my golden hour of energy.
I know, I've never seen you so perky.
So I'm excited to go and see it now. I think it's a good time to see it. So, yeah.
So we're not... I think we can safely say neither of us are really into war movies.
I just don't watch them very often, or they're not out very often.
Well, also I'm just like I never really have engaged with any war movies in particular. I know, like, I've seen them all. I've seen, Platoon.
What about like Saving Private Ryan? Were you into that?
Saving Private Ryan was good, but I'd never sit down and watch it.
I can't remember it.
Oh, let's throw on Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Like,
interestingly, I did see another movie about Dunkirk this year.
What was it?
Which was Their Finest, which you didn't see with me.
Oh, right.
So the premise of that movie was
which you went to see with your mother?
I went
Go
to see
listen
with my
to
mother.
that.
So within that movie, they're making a movie about Dunkirk.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have to be honest, this is like probably English people will think I'm a total idiot, but actually, not being from England, I didn't really know about Dunkirk.
Did you think it was in Scotland? Because I did.
No, I just didn't know anything about it until I saw that movie. So
neither did I, I'll be honest.
I think it's something that like English people are really aware of, but I don't necessarily think it's something that's travelled, unless you're into history, war history, which I guess I'm not.
And neither of us are history buffs. I would go so far as to say we're both a little bit ignorant
yes.
about history.
Particularly that, and then also I'm not the biggest Christopher Nolan fan in that I really liked Memento and I really liked Interstellar. But I just was never into his Batman movies. They just took themselves way too seriously for my liking.
Well, they are largely overrated, I think, to be honest.
I liked the first one. I remember really liking the first one because that was such a shock when it came out, it was so different. And then when I saw the second and third ones, I was like, meh, whatever, over it.
If you want, I did a full podcast with my friend Joe Kiley over on Shitegeist. If you want to hear me talk way more about Christopher Nolan and my thoughts on him, at Shitegeist Pod. But I'm kind of excited for this now. I wasn't excited, didn't have any interest in it, but then all these rave reviews
I know, I
came
can't
out.
wait. Just for the full IMAX experience. So I've only been to IMAX before in Sydney, which I was never that impressed with. It claimed to be the biggest IMAX in the Southern Hemisphere, but I often wondered if it was because it was like the only IMAX in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, what else is in the Southern?
We did see a really good movie there when we saw Mission Impossible 4, Ghost Protocol.
And
just for that bit when he climbed up the building.
That was so amazing.
That was
in IMAX.
amazing.
Like, that was our first IMAX experience as well, and I just remember being like blown away. But like that movie, for instance, had maybe I think 3 or 4 scenes in IMAX, essentially the action
basically
scenes.
the scene of him climbing up the building.
Well, that's the main one, but it's very expensive to film on IMAX cameras, so most movies tend to be, I think even the Dark Knight movies, you're about talking maybe 25% at the time was a very large number of scenes to be filmed in IMAX. But this movie I read on the way over, 75% of this movie is in IMAX.
Wow.
Is in full IMAX. So
then it's worth the extortionate price we paid for the tickets.
Yeah, it's pricey.
What did we pay? £40 for these tickets?
Something like that.
Yeah.
But you know what? The way I'm going to treat this, and this is how Christopher Nolan sort of wrote it and intended it to be experienced, is it's an immersive experience. It's very light on dialogue, apparently. It's very light on story. He said, the quote from him was something like, it's not about who these people are or their backgrounds, it's about will they get out, or how will they get out.
Yeah, I'm invested in it. I'm just going to view it as like an immersive experience. And one of the reasons we waited a week to get the tickets is we could have got some earlier in the week, like right up the front at the edge, and we were like, no, we want good seats, we don't want to be kind of at the edge of the screen right up the front.
Yeah, because it's hard, and like no matter where you sit in IMAX, it usually feels like you're up the front anyway.
And I've never been to this
immense.
IMAX, so I'm excited. So yeah, we're up for this one, I think. And I mean, it's just getting such ridiculous reviews. My friend Rob from the Electric Shadows podcast has been to see this 3 times already in 1 week.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm hearing some mixed reviews. Some friends back in Ireland said did nothing for them, left them cold. So I wonder.
Yeah, I'm interested because a lot of his movies have left me cold, and then Interstellar left me like a complete wreck of a human being. So.
But in general, he's a cold director, I'd say. Like, he's very clinical. I think he's a genius. I think he's very singular. He's one of the few auteurs working in.
I like how he pushes
industries.
for the cinematic experience and, you know, the use of film and all this sort of stuff. And we do need to mention the fact that Harry Styles is in this movie, and my little sister Jackie called it the Harry Styles movie, and she wasn't joking. She really meant that. So I think that's actually a genuine marketing point for people.
Well, Nolan says that he didn't know who Harry Styles was when he cast him.
Unlikely.
Well, I think it's possible, but it sounds like
some casting agent would have. He would be like, "Why
somebody knew?
Why
like,
am I auditioning somebody who's never been in a movie before? Because he's famous for something else."
Somebody in a boardroom somewhere said the words 16 to 24 audience, and this happened.
Yeah. Anyway, apparently he's quite good, so no judgment. And let's go.
But quickly, you just pull the plug on these things.
Yeah.
Well, we are here, so yeah, let's head in. Okay. See you on the other side of Dunkirk.
About to leave.
Down you go.
They need to send more ships. Every hour the enemy pushes closer. They've activated the civilian boats. Civilians? We need destroyers. Where are we going? Dunkirk. I'm not going back. If we go there, we'll die. You're weekend sailors, not the bloody Navy. You should be at home.
There's no hiding from this, son. We have a job to do.
Turn it around!
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall never surrender. We shall never surrender. We shall never surrender.
Okay. We're just...
We're traumatized.
Actually shell-shocked. We're just out of Dunkirk. We're walking down the Southbank. I can't even... I'm like speechless. That movie just knocked me sideways.
It was... Do you know what? I finally get it. I always thought IMAX was a bit of a gimmick. And I actually genuinely now understand the function of it, because that was incredible.
That's one of the greatest cinematic experiences I've ever had.
It was so immersive. Like, do you know what? I was hoping I'd like it, and I just had this feeling that I wouldn't, and I have to say I loved it. I totally agree. It's as a cinematic experience, one of the best things I've probably ever sat through. But also, just beforehand, they did an introduction to the movie. Like, the whole experience felt incredible. And then because we'd gotten really good seats right up the back, it was just, like, to be honest, I didn't notice the screen because so much of it was in IMAX. It wasn't like when we went to see Mission Impossible and the screen kept changing in and out of IMAX and it was just all really weird.
No,
this
see,
was
I
just beautiful.
I disagree, actually. I found it a little jarring, because often in IMAX movies that have been shot, some scenes in IMAX, it's the entire, a particular scene will be entirely filmed in IMAX, so there'll only be one transition to the widescreen, to the bigger screen format, and it happens on a scene cut. This movie was actually cutting in and out of full screen mid scenes, which you didn't seem to notice, but no. I was noticing it a little bit, which I actually found a little distracting, because the black bars were coming in and out, like based on like different cuts during conversations sometimes.
I think I was just so immersed in it that I was like just so blown away by the whole thing. Like, the sound, oh my god, it was almost too loud, but it worked because we feel like we've been assaulted.
Definitely too loud. I think our baby might come out deaf.
Yeah, I genuinely thought that halfway through. I suddenly put my hands over my bump as if that was somehow going to protect its ears. I was like, this is too loud.
It is. I actually worry about hearing damage.
No, I mean, there's no way you can do hearing damage. It worked for the movie
because it was just the sound design in this. Or first of all, we're not going to spoil any particular plot points yet. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But just the sound of the bombers, they sort of train you to hear that initial sound of the plane engines coming in, and you sort of get a little bit of Kenneth Branagh's reactions in particular. And any time that happened, I felt this like dread in the pit of my stomach.
I just kept. Do you know what? I think in terms of war, and you know, we were saying before the movie that we've not seen a lot of war movies, but I've read a lot of books.
I've seen a lot of war movies. I just said I just don't.
It's not a genre that I've in the last couple of years I've been
them.
like going to the cinema or anything. But in terms of, I've read a lot of books set in the war, like in World War II. But to be sitting there with that noise and that vision was just something else. Like, it just transported you to what you would imagine it would be like, and how relentless it was. Like, someone would get on a boat, then the boat would sink, then they get on another boat, then that boat would sink, then they'd be bombed, then they'd be shot at. And it was just like the absolute relentless horror of it.
He's written, he's spoken in interviews about how he sort of did away with the 3-act structure. There is no narrative 3-act structure here.
I disagree.
Each
plot had its own 3-act structure.
It kind of, yeah, I guess it kind of did.
So we need to say there's 3 different plots, and they're set across 3 different timelines. I'm glad I had read that before I saw the movie, because I think I might have spent a lot of time trying to figure that out.
I had read it beforehand as well.
So there's one plot set over a week, one plot set over a day, and one plot set over an hour. And because I understood that from having read it already, I bought into it. I was fully on board with it. I loved it. I wonder if you didn't know that, if you'd spend a lot of time a bit confused at the start of the movie.
I was thinking about that. I don't think I would have figured it out until about halfway through the movie if I didn't know. But I actually don't think... Well, first of all, my thoughts on this, I'm a little scattered because I'm just literally reeling. I loved it. It was just incredible. I wept uncontrollably.
Yes, you did.
For large portions of this movie. Not only the bits where you're supposed to weep, but just I was weeping when ships were sinking during action scenes. I've never like cried at an action scene, but I found it just so affecting. I'm
really surprised
really
with criticism
upset.
of it not being emotional, because I felt very emotional as well.
I felt very emotional. I felt like just being confronted with... I just felt like it was just seeing the reality of war, and then I sort of internal monologue came out. It's so sad.
They're so young
and so pointless.
Yeah, they're so young, and I just completely disagree with any... And I've read a lot of reviews of people saying, like, you know, there's no dialogue, I didn't feel anything for the characters. But when a movie's this well directed and this well acted, the characters are conveyed through the action, and 100% I believe that in this movie. Like, it's not like watching something like we did last week, War of the Planet of the Apes, where there's no dialogue, but it's because it's all sign language, so there's just all this tedious signed exposition. They could have taken a note out of this movie and actually just done away with any language, because you don't need it obviously this is Christopher Nolan, he's an incredible director, but you just knew everything about all the characters through their actions, and I thought that was incredible. In fact, anytime there was dialogue, that's my one flaw with the sound of the movie. I couldn't hear, whenever anyone spoke, I had to whisper it to you to tell me what they said, because I could not make it out above the noise.
Yeah, and Tom Hardy wore a mask.
Oh, I did not know Bane was in this movie.
Yeah.
I genuinely didn't know Bane fought in World War II.
I think Tom Hardy prefers roles where most of his face is obscured.
So weird. Like, I mean, he's a great actor and I love
Bane.
him, but he doesn't. Like, in this movie, it could be anyone behind that mask.
Mad Max, he spends a lot of it with a muzzle on.
But it was Bane's voice.
Yeah.
So that was quite funny. But yeah, I think it's fair to say we both absolutely loved that movie. And I'm so shocked at myself because I thought I would not be into it.
I cannot. I think that's one of the greatest. I need a bit of time to digest this, but on a whole, whole experience is one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in the cinema, and I was literally weeping uncontrollably. I was shaking at the end of it.
You were crying more than me, and I cried. That's very odd. Do you feel like... I
don't know, maybe I'm just in an emotional state.
I'm glad we went to see it in the morning. We need to say that 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, that cinema was packed. And I'm so glad we saw it then, because it's really emotional and really almost exhausting to watch. And I think if you did go, later in the day, if you're a bit tired or whatever, and you've been commuting all day, this is just... I would really recommend A, seeing it in IMAX, and B, giving yourself a relaxing time of the day to watch it.
Yeah, it is exhausting. It's 100 minutes, which by any standard, we talk a lot about length of movies these days.
I know,
and
I'm
they're
so
all
impressed.
approaching
Way over 2 hours.
Way over 2 hours. This is, but this feels like if it had been any more, I think I would need
Couldn't
psych
handle it,
evaluation.
I think I really admire his restraint in that sense, because it's the kind of movie that any studio would have said, go for your life, make it as long as you want. And it's a very restrained running order. And they said at the start, there was an introduction, and they said, it's 6 miles of film? Did he say
If
6
you laid
miles?
out all the film,
That was really interesting.
it would, for this film, it
And
would
for a lot of the
scan
movie, so
6
we were
miles.
sitting pretty much near the back in the middle. So I'm so glad we waited for our seats. But during it, my back was quite sore. IMAX seats, not good if you're 9 months pregnant. So I went and stood up the back, which I could tell the usher, she wasn't that pleased about. But then I said, I can't sit down. My back's too sore. And basically when you're pregnant, no one says anything to you. So I was standing at the back for about 40 minutes. And oh my god, I actually wish you'd watched it from there, because those plane scenes over the ocean, when I was standing further away than the seats, right in the centre of the screen, like blew my mind. Like I was like just mouth agape, just like could not even. It was so beautiful and so immersive. So if anyone can sneak up the back of IMAX.
So do you think further back is better?
Oh
than
yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think that as well. I've never stood at the back.
It was incredible, but it was too warm, so I came and sat down again. That's one thing that IMAX could have done with a bit of aircon today.
Just going back to the non-linear narrative, I actually disagree. I don't think that really added anything to the movie for me. I think I would have preferred if it had been linear.
Oh yeah, I didn't say it added anything to me. I'm just saying because I understood it,
Oh, I see,
wasn't
yeah.
confused by it.
I think I might have been a little confused if I hadn't known, and I don't really see what it added to it, except it's just a gimmick almost. I mean, Nolan is
I don't
very.
agree.
All his movies tend to play with time and linearity in a way.
I liked it because when they all aligned, I found it incredibly powerful.
I guess.
And I like people experimenting with time in movies. That's always something I enjoy anyway. I know what you mean though, because I think a lot of people, because they'll have been confused at the start, it will detract from their enjoyment.
I just felt like it didn't bring anything to me. I guess it's an interesting decision, but I didn't
enjoyed
need it.
it.
I would have just preferred linear here.
It's a stylistic choice basically. You're either into or you're not. I think
it was fine. It didn't detract from anything, but it felt redundant to me.
And what do you think? I loved the 3 settings he chose, which was the air, the individuals trying to leave the beach,
land and the sea,
and then the individuals coming from the UK on the little ships to try and rescue them, which is such a beautiful story. And that plot, it had Mark Rylance, who's obviously incredible, his son, who I think is an extra from Made in Chelsea, because that's exactly what he looked like, though he was a great actor. And then this Irish actor who I was so pleased to see, I've just looked up his name, it's Barry Keoghan. So if anyone's watched Love Hate, which is a really good Irish TV show, he's in that. He's the little kid. Do you remember him?
Yeah, he's a horrible kid.
Little
scumbag
yeah.
character.
But he's so good in
He's
this.
excellent in this.
And I'm just so pleased to see an actor like that getting a chance in a movie like this. So I really thought that plot was incredible. And then Cillian Murphy came on board, so you're just watching these incredible actors.
Let's talk a little bit about the actors. I thought across the board, amazing
Oh
performances.
my god, like blew my mind, the acting.
I mean, everyone will be asking about Harry Styles.
He's really good.
Thought he was good. I mean, but like, interestingly, when you compare it to, we were talking on our Game of Thrones episode recently about Ed Sheeran showing up.
Oh, there's no comparison.
You should have, but it's interesting. There should be a similar effect because he is quite a famous face, but he blended right in.
But he wasn't the focus of any scene.
Well, yeah,
whereas in
exactly.
that Game of Thrones scene, they made Ed Sheeran the focus of the scene because he was singing and all that. You know, Harry Styles didn't rock in singing a pop song.
Yeah.
He very much was a background character who got a little bit more prominence as it went on. But I genuinely, I didn't just think he was passable and not distracting. I genuinely thought he was a good actor.
Yeah, he delivered everything well.
I loved. So then that plot was, the young men leaving the beach and just trying to get home. I thought that main actor of that group was incredible. The young guy now, I don't know his name.
His name is Fionn Whitehead.
Oh,
I think.
how do you know? Do you know him for something else?
No, I don't. I just was looking this up on the train over.
Yeah.
He is.
He's great.
Says very little.
He essentially says nothing, and he was like the number one character I was rooting
really
for.
Really powerful performance.
Yeah.
I'd like to get to Spoiler Street in a minute because I think there's some particulars I'd like to.
So let's briefly discuss the third plot then. So the third plot was was it 2 guys or did it start out with 3 pilots? I got a little bit confused visually because they all look the same. They all had the masks on. I didn't quite follow their plot at the start, but I really enjoyed it.
3 British Spitfire fighters assisting with the rescue.
Yeah, so that was interesting. Now, that was all obviously from the sky. They had masks on. You couldn't quite get invested. But by the end, you did. But as I said, for those scenes, watching them from the back of the cinema, it, like, blew my mind. It was
Really?
just so beautiful, yeah.
When you think of, like, personally, I don't find aerial combat has ever been done very well in movies.
Now, we are going to see Top Gun in a few weeks, so
I think
we can make a direct comparison.
I think that's a great example, because I think the aerial fights in Top Gun, which is what that movie is all about, are complete dog
but it's
shit.
too hard to engage
You can't
us.
follow any of it.
Yeah, I don't think it works cinematically, but in this instance, it was probably as good as I've seen.
I think so, yeah, but the reason I think it worked was because it tied in quite well without spoiling anything with what was happening in the sea.
Yeah, because they all linked.
And on the land, so
on its own it wouldn't have worked.
There was more context rather than just a load of planes flying around and you don't quite know who's
and it
who
would
or
cut
what's
to
what.
the people on the ground and we'd see it from their perspective. But I just think, like, it's a bit of a tragedy to get an actor as good and as famous as Tom Hardy and essentially could be me behind the mask in the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If anything, one of his co-pilots, I don't know who played
he
him.
had way more face time.
Yeah, and he had a lot more to do. And was more interesting.
It was interesting, but then, I mean, Tom Hardy did come into his own. So, yeah, I think we should go to Spoiler Street as well. Now, obviously, most people know the story of Dunkirk, so we can't spoil the overall thing, but we want to talk about the characters.
Maybe, individual moments. I guess I would recommend, first of all, go see this movie, absolutely, and experience it in the biggest and loudest screen you can find, because that is the way to do this.
But for me, I have to say, this is purely a cinematic experience. I will not watch this movie again on a small screen.
And I wonder how much would be lost when if you watched it at home. 6 months
because then it's part of watching it at home, and I know Christopher Nolan doesn't make stuff for the small screen anyway. Part of what makes this movie so great is how you're watching it, right, in that immersive environment. So to watch it at home, you lose most of that, and suddenly you're like, you would start going, oh well, actually maybe there's not enough people speaking for me, maybe I'm not invested enough, maybe it's a bit long. But other criticisms might come in, whereas when you're at this in the cinema, that's so overwhelming that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So yeah. Watch it on a big screen.
So go see it. But we'll turn on to the spoiler section of Southbank.
Yeah, lovely part of Southbank. Spoiler Street.
Yeah,
I
don't know if anyone's ever wandered down here.
Yeah.
It's just past the Oxo Tower.
Yeah, it's lovely.
So spoilery around here.
Yeah, it is so spoilery. Okay.
So, what do you want to? Why don't we talk about each of the three separate plots? So
again, I don't know that there is much to spoil, really.
It's starting to rain.
So with the plot with the Mark Rylance and his son and their little Irish ship boy, whatever his name was.
Well, he wasn't Irish in this.
He wasn't Irish in this.
George. Oh my God.
I just thought, poor George. And then his beautiful speech when he said, I just want to be remembered. Maybe one of my teachers will see me in the paper.
I just thought that.
God.
That got me bad.
And then when the son, Mark Rylance's son,
he was excellent.
He was excellent. And I mean, they're all incredible. When he went and got his school picture and actually brought it to the paper and then it was published. I mean, that's when we were both
sweet.
Just bawling.
But
and it's interesting, he's the biggest tragedy we saw, and he wasn't even a soldier.
It was so sad. But just the moment where we found out that he died, and then there's a lovely moment between the son and Cillian Murphy. Cillian Murphy, who you can't really blame him for this, and the son doesn't wish to inflict any more pain on him.
Yeah,
so
he says,
him,
he's fine.
Is he going to be all right? And he says yes.
I do think, I mean, obviously I know Cillian Murphy is in all Christopher Nolan movies, and he loves him, and Cillian Murphy's an amazing actor.
And
from
Tom
Cork,
Hardy.
where we're from, so obviously we like him. He was almost like wasted in this, like he barely had anything to do. I don't think he was.
But it was an interesting character to have that, to see someone who's suffering from extreme mental trauma, who's just left the battle, and then to have to go back into that.
I know, and I did enjoy then that we flashed back to seeing him earlier when he was in a much more capable mood.
Yeah.
I almost
That's
didn't
the
buy
point.
it
I think
then.
a lot of people will be like, huh?
Yeah, I think that's the one you realise the timelines are off.
Yeah.
But I almost think, okay, he went to the effort. If he started to fight Mark Rylance, say, turn the ship back, I'm not going to Dunkirk, knocks his kid over and then just stops and is like then completely like docile and willing to go back to Dunkirk. And I thought, no, actually, I think he'd have pushed it a bit more. I don't think he'd have just stopped.
Well, no, I think we'd seen what he'd done, and then he was just obsessed with the safety of that boy.
I mean, he wasn't that obsessed. He didn't go down and help him.
But I think, look,
I mean, he obviously had PTSD.
Anyway,
but the
what
whole
Mark
thing
Rylance
is so traumatic.
was
he's
very
incredible as usual.
very subtle sort of performance from him. Like there's
Like all his performances.
you get a little bit of tragedy when you find out about the son, but just his commitment to doing the right thing, and he wouldn't let the Navy take over. He wanted to go in and help, and there was quite an interesting thing with his plot where Cillian Murphy says to him, "You should be at home. You're an old man," and he was like, "No, I don't want any more of my sons to."
Well, he
to
said
fight.
he said old men have sent young men to die in this war, which I
Yeah.
thought was really amazing. Yeah, I really enjoyed him. I also kind of got the impression or assumed that he had probably fought in World War I himself.
Yeah, likely.
So, and then the moment when him, and I love this because it was taking just the micro plot of him, and then it pulled out the camera, and we saw like,
All the
hundreds of
ships.
civilian ships arriving at the same time, and that was the first time in the movie that I got really emotional and actually started crying because I thought it was so.
Yeah.
It was just such a lovely moment, and you needed that moment of happiness where everyone cheered. And
Can we talk about Hans
was
Zimmer's
beautiful.
score a little bit, because it really swelled there.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. But actually, I thought it really was most affecting in the in any of the suspense moments. Like the score kept building and
Yeah, it
building
was
and building
incredible.
and building. Just so simple as just like a violin hitting
I mean, this
a
will have to just
crescendo and
sweep
getting
the Oscars,
faster.
right? You would assume. I mean, not for acting categories probably, because the roles are all too small in their own right. But just for the score and the direction. And
I'd love to
sound.
I'd love to see director. I'd love to see sound editing, sound
And
mixing.
I think the script, now this might be controversial, but to write such a lean dialogue, such an unusual way of telling the story, and to have it all based around this historical event, I think is really quite an achievement. I really admire the script writing in this. There's one instance
I
where
don't
the
know.
dialogue told me something that the visual didn't, which was they said there are 400,000 men on this beach. And I thought, okay, that's weird because they have not conveyed at all that there's 400,000 men on the beach. Like at
That's
most
true,
I would have
and
thought 50,000 from
The other
visual.
thing was at the end, Kenneth Branagh then says, Churchill got his 30,000 plus more. We got 300,000 off. And I was like, that hadn't been conveyed to me either.
It
Because all
appeared
you'd
that
really
like
seen,
200 people have been rescued.
well, all you'd really seen was everything going wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't get a sense that 300,000 people got away.
So it was it was almost like in that instance he chose for the dialogue to tell us something that he just didn't have time to fit in visually, and that's fine because that's the script should make up for that. But I just thought, oh, that's interesting.
Let's talk a bit about that Fionn Whitehead. I think it was Whitehead. Fionn Whitehead on the land. His story.
He
Minimal
opened
dialogue
the movie.
there. He opens the movie, incredible scene, and then he meets this
I was
guy
with it from
who
that
was
opening scene.
who's French, and we didn't realise the whole time because they were just communicating.
Oh, I knew straight away.
Did
Well,
you?
I thought he was German. I didn't think he was French because
Oh,
we
I
saw that
never-
he had blatantly
I didn't.
stripped a corpse.
Oh well, you're smarter than me. I just thought he was burying his friend. I
No,
literally
because
thought that.
we saw that he'd taken the shoes, and then we actually saw that he was adjusting his trousers and his top, like he'd blatantly stolen the uniform.
Oh,
now, I
clever,
thought it
okay.
was obviously you didn't pick up on that, and I did, but I also thought it was a good twist that he was French at the end because I thought he's German.
Yeah.
Plus, the plot was called The Mole, so I knew that was related to him.
No, the mole was a reference to the area, I think, because Kenneth Branagh said we need to focus on the mole.
Oh well,
Anyway,
I also
now
think there was a double reference.
Somebody write in and correct us
No, I
there.
think it was also a double reference though to him being a mole because I thought
But
he
he
was
wasn't a
German
mole.
spy.
He was French.
Yeah, but they were making the audience think he was a mole.
Oh yeah, okay.
Well, I did.
But anyway, all the stuff with them, and then
they like got a stretcher just to get on the boat. Like that
it's
was
so
really
clever.
interesting.
I thought everything they did to try to survive was it was very ingenious and clever, but it was just really powerful. The struggle and like the way
They're just young boys want to get out of war.
I
That's
know,
all it is.
I just wanted them to escape, and I felt so stressed when they got on the boat, and then the main guys, Harry Styles asked the main guys, "Where's your friend?" He said he's up on board. He's like got an exit strategy essentially. Like he thought it was.
and
when
I
they were
thought,
all
he's
trapped
German and
down
he's
there,
going to leave them trapped, and then
Oh.
he rescues them, which I thought was amazing.
when
'Cause
they were
again-
all trapped in that boat when it was sinking, I just started crying again.
yeah, that was really traumatic.
Oh, it's raining.
Hold on, I'll get an umbrella. So yeah, that whole plot, and then when they got on the boat and they align with Mark Rylance and his son, I just loved that. And then they're covered in oil,
How about-
and then it's kind of flashing back to them before they were rescued by Mark Rylance. And at that point, I thought, do you know what? We get it. I don't think you need to be showing us as they're being rescued, also showing us before they were being rescued. I didn't necessarily think that really added anything.
There were so many clever little bits here because apparently I was reading Christopher Nolan just like read hundreds of first-hand accounts of of people's experiences, and he tied a lot of those stories into these plots. The plots are all fictional, the characters are fictional, but they're all based on real accounts. And one of the ones that got me was the boat that is stranded on the shore, and that's going to get brought in by the tide, and they're all hiding there. Then the Germans start target practice in the holes, then they have to patch the holes up.
And that showed how clever our protagonist is, because he's the only one on the ship who said no, they're only doing target practice. The rest of them thought they were under attack.
Yeah.
So he was smart, and he was brave, because he's the only one who would stick his head up above the water as well.
And he's the only one who was standing up for the French guy.
I loved that when he had this real moral moment, and he said, why would we throw him off board because he's French? And he also very practically said that won't make any difference. Like, the boat's sinking, throwing one person overboard makes no difference.
Live with that.
And I thought in this scene Harry Styles was really good. He played a proper, not villainous at all, but just self-serving in that moment of, well, we're going to die, so why would we save a French person when we're all English? And you could totally understand his point of view, and at the same time you totally felt for the French guy. And I just thought that was really amazing. And when they got rescued and then they were just on the boat, and then when they landed in England, what I thought was really interesting, again, from Harry Styles' character, was that he was shamed that they had fled, and he thought that everyone was judging them for being cowards. He
thought the guy wouldn't look him in the eyes, but he was blind.
He was blind, yeah. And then that was another beautiful moment when they were on the train then.
They get handed the beers through the window.
And he thinks people are knocking on the window to taunt them, but people aren't. They're just saying, like, welcome back. They give them beer, and just even little moments like when they first got on the big boat that ended up getting torpedoed. They're given toast and jam, all the comfort. Like, they're so nice. Hungry and tired and cold. But
hearing Churchill's words, I thought, were very powerful.
Yeah, I thought that was really powerful at the end.
Such an amazing speech. It's a very famous speech. But I thought, the bit that everyone remembers is, we will fight them on beaches, we'll fight them on the sea. That's the stuff that's very heroic and powerful. But I thought I read on Wikipedia on the way over on the train, because I was reading up about Dunkirk. Apparently the press obviously hailed this as a victory, but it wasn't. And he said his key phrase was, "This is not a victory. An evacuation is not a victory." It
depends what you're talking about victory. I mean, he
was trying to put this in context, because you've got to remember, this is the very beginning of the war. This is 1940.
Oh, I didn't realise it was that early.
Yeah, this is 1940.
Oh, I thought it was later.
This is literally when Germany have just swept through France and taken it.
Oh, okay,
so you're talking, they've got a long, long road ahead of them.
So do you think those young soldiers would have had to go back to Germany then? Probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had any kind of respite.
Imagine that?
And then if we think about, in recent history, how recent this is, like just two guys at work I was chatting to the other day, and they both said their grandfathers have been at Dunkirk. Yeah. You think, like, that's first-hand accounts of this event. It really blew my mind. And then I
feel like it's got a very... You kind of said it before we went in, but it's got a... This movie, I think, will have a different impact for the British.
Yeah. Obviously it's completely British-centric.
We're Irish.
I assume in France it will be huge, and they'll all be as interested. I think it's going to be huge everywhere.
It's a very British. It's a British story.
But I don't think it matters if you're not British or you don't know about it before.
No. Well, I found it incredibly
moving. It's a human story.
But I think there's something more about it for the British. Obviously the Irish, we didn't fight in World War II. A lot of Irish did go and fight for the British, but Ireland was neutral. There's a more personal point to all this.
Yeah, of course. And then I think we should just very briefly talk about the Tom Hardy plot. There's not really much to say.
I thought that was probably the least interesting.
Yeah, but also because it was only set over an hour, right? So if you think of that compared to something that's set over a day or a week.
I thought a few things I liked. I thought the him trying to keep track of his fuel with a bit of chalk was very clever.
Because his gauge wasn't working. I completely, as I said, missed the first guy being killed, so I didn't think that was done particularly well.
Yeah.
And then
that was their commander.
And then I really enjoyed it.
But I like
the commander had such a 1950s voice. He was like, "Hello, chaps, we're ready to go."
I liked that there's no way, like, the commander had gone down, but they didn't know. Like, and he just wasn't answering us, and then he had to, like, sweep around the area and look for his boat. Then they had to say, there was no parachute, he's probably dead. All the little judgment calls you have to make.
Why do none of them have parachutes? I find that very odd.
Well, he went for a sea landing, because at least if you landed at sea, you've a chance of seeing a float.
I did enjoy
that was terrifying when he was trying to get out.
Yeah, I really
he was
enjoyed when
sinking.
Mark Rylance and them rescued him. I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And then at the end, just when all three plots came together and Tom Hardy, shot down the German plane and everyone cheered for him, I thought that was really beautiful. And then Tom Hardy makes this beautiful kind of sunset landing. And then did German soldiers come and get
he
him?
got captured.
Okay, yeah, that's what
Interestingly, the only time in the movie we ever saw a single German soldier.
I thought. Yeah, really interesting.
You don't see the opposing side in this.
So yeah, I think we were both. I mean, I
just
expected
the
you
threat
to
of
really
it.
like it, and you always enjoy like big, Christopher Nolan movies and big IMAX things.
No, well, not always.
I'm really happy that I liked it because there's nothing better than going to the cinema and having an experience like that. I almost feel like in our usual format of just reacting immediately, we almost need to have thought about it a bit more. But look, we can't help that.
I felt I was so moved by the whole experience.
Yeah.
By the whole thing.
And let's
I
hope our
wanna
child
go
isn't
again.
deaf.
yeah.
I'm really genuinely concerned now. And then, so yeah, I mean, God, go and see it. And look, whether you love it or hate it, it's completely worthwhile going to see either way because
It has been a little
show you what
divisive.
cinema can do. It's not really divisive though. It's overwhelmingly
Yeah.
positive reviews. It's just some people, I think the only criticism I've really heard is that some
It left
people
them
left them
cold.
cold and they felt they weren't emotionally invested,
Yeah.
which I completely disagreed with. And if you do want to see a movie, another completely different take on Dunkirk, which was really interesting to me, and I loved it, and I reviewed it a couple of months ago with my mom, as I mentioned, Their Finest. I think you'd really like it. So in that movie, they're making, within the context of the movie, they're making another one that's based on an event that had happened, which was two sisters had stolen their dad's boat and gone out themselves to save soldiers. And it was just really moving. Again, it's that story of the everyman, doing something really heroic during war, or every woman. Normally I would give out about this movie saying, there's no women in it. But in this instance, that's historically accurate, and there's no reason why women would have been in the movie. I did love at the end when the civilians came along, and there were women on those boats, and one of them was wearing heels. You go, girl. She's just standing on the boat with a pair of heels. Yeah, I think, and another thing I wanted to mention was, I know I had said, I haven't really seen any more movies in years, but I had actually, towards the end of this, remembered I saw one that you didn't see. I think it was about 3 years ago. It's called The Water Diviner, the Russell Crowe movie.
Oh yeah.
And that's about Gallipoli and in the trenches of World War I. And those trench scenes I thought were really incredible.
Yeah.
I totally recommend people see that. And that was another one you think, oh, so close to home, because after I saw it, I was speaking to my dad about it, and he told me my great-grandfather had been in Gallipoli, which I hadn't known. And that, in terms of World War I trench warfare, I thought was really well done. I really enjoyed that. And
World War One was a lot more
so
brutal
different
and horrible.
and it's all just so recent. That's the terrifying thing about watching a movie like this.
That's what kept getting to me.
Yeah.
Just the whole concept of war and the reality of it, and that this all happened, and it's still happening to varying
I know,
degrees.
it's just
across
horrific.
the
This is
world.
just such a huge scale. And then I do want to mention as well, we don't normally talk about books on this podcast, but a book we both read last year. It's called All the Light You Cannot See, and it was written by Anthony Doerr, and it won the Pulitzer for fiction. And I couldn't stop thinking about that book during this movie. Were you thinking about it?
No,
So
but
that
it's
book is
amazing.
has two main characters, so a young French girl and a young German boy, and it all accumulates again in a French seaside town. This is much later in the war, under Nazi occupation, and it's one of the best books I ever read. I totally recommend a read of it if you're interested in this particular area of the world during that time of the war. Just incredible. And I think I was more moved by this movie because I kept thinking of that book as well, which is a bit weird. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything else to say. I just totally recommend it.
Let's leave it there.
Yeah, and I just have to say I've never seen Dave so upset in a movie.
I'm really upset.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm speechless.
But then at the end, how happy were we both when we saw that guy in the newspaper? That was such a beautiful moment. That local boy is a
But
hero
it's
at
just so
Dunkirk.
Tragic.
I know, it's just such a waste of young lives, and that's why I think it's really important that they had that line from Mark Rylance where he says, older men are sending young men to their death.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is, always. So yeah, wow.
I love Mark Rylance.
I'm like exhausted after watching that movie.
I know. How are we going to go have a normal day?
Yeah. So anyway, I'm glad
Okay.
we saw it when we did, and we're under an umbrella here. So
Well, let us know.
Yeah.
Let us know what you thought of Dunkirk. Please tweet us at the Cinemile You can email us at thecinemaile@gmail.com, and please like us on Facebook. Just search The Cinemile, and we're on Instagram as well.
Yeah, and also tell us if you didn't like it and why you didn't like it, because I'd be really interested to hear.
Yeah,
that.
I am interested to have some conversations about it.
Because I feel like we're so on the same page with this movie, which doesn't always happen, so it'll be interesting to hear dissent.
Yeah, no, because I'm very interested to hear different opinions on this without, I don't want to shout anyone down.
And I also,
just think it's interesting.
if we hadn't seen it at IMAX, I wonder if we'd be as raving about it as
Yeah,
we are.
I think this is, you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier. You said this is all about how you see it.
Yeah, if I watched
this
this
is-
at home on TV, I probably would have no interest in
It's
it.
pure cinema.
Yeah, it's pure cinematic experience. And don't forget, one more thing, subscribe to us on iTunes, and we would very much appreciate it if you left us a review.
And pop in there and leave us a review. That really, really helps us get noticed. And we've had some lovely reviews from people. Thank you to everyone who has done.
Yes. Okay, let's go out to the
I
rain.
love you all.
Dave. Bye.
Bye.